Maurice Leblanc, the Hellish Trap. After the races, as a thick stream of spectators surged past him toward the grandstand exit, Nicholas Dugrival instinctively pressed his hand against the inner pocket of his jacket. His wife noticed the gesture and asked, "What is the matter with you?" "I cannot set my mind at ease," he replied. "With all that money on me, I am terrified for it." To which she retorted, "That is exactly why I cannot understand you. Is it truly wise to carry such a sum? Our entire fortune. It was not so easily earned, you know." "Bah," he said. "Who could possibly know it is there inside my wallet?" Of course, she grumbled. "Though that little servant we dismissed last week knew it perfectly well. Didn't he, Gabriel?" "Yes, Aunt," replied the young man, keeping pace beside them. The Dugrivals and their nephew, Gabriel, were well-known figures at the hippodromes. The regulars saw them almost every day. Dugrival was a stout, red-faced man with the air of a bon vivant. His wife was equally heavy-set, with a coarse face, always dressed in a plum-colored gown of far too obvious shabbiness. Finally, there was a nephew, quite young, thin, and pale, with light, slightly curling hair. The family usually stayed from the first race to the last. It was Gabriel who placed the bets for his uncle, watched the horses in the paddock, gathered whispers from the circles of jockeys and stable boys, and scurried between the stands to finalize the wagers. Fortune had smiled upon them that day, for Dugrival's neighbors had thrice seen the nephew bringing him his winnings. The fifth race was drawing to a close. Dugrival lit a cigar. At that moment, a gentleman tightly buttoned into a chestnut-colored jacket, his face framed by a graying beard, approached him and asked confidentially, "Excuse me, monsieur, but have you not had these watches stolen?" He held out a gold watch suspended from a chain. Dugrival started. "Why, certainly they are mine. Look, my initials are engraved here, ending Nicholas Dugrival." He immediately clutched his jacket pocket in a panic. The wallet was still there. "Ah," he murmured, shaken. "I have been lucky, then. But how could it have happened? Has the scoundrel been caught?" "Yes. He is in custody at the station. Be so kind as to follow me. We must clear this matter up. To whom do I have the honor of speaking?" "Delangle, Inspector of the Charite. I have already informed Monsieur Marquand, the police magistrate." Nicholas Dugrival followed the inspector. Circling the grandstands, they headed toward the police office. They were about 50 paces from their destination when someone approached the inspector and hurriedly informed him, "The fellow with the watch has confessed. We are on the trail of an entire gang. Monsieur Marquand asks that you wait near the betting area and keep an eye on the activity around Shed 4. The spot was crowded, and Inspector Delangle grumbled, "What an idiotic corner. And whom am I supposed to watch? Monsieur Marquand is always dreaming something up." He pushed aside the people who were crowding him too closely. "Deuce take it. One must use their elbows here and hold tight to their wallet. That is likely how they got to you, Monsieur Dugrival. I cannot imagine how... Oh, if you only knew how these gentlemen operate. Like lightning. One steps on your toe, another nearly pokes your eye out with his cane, and the third lifts your wallet. 3 movements, and the job is done. I myself, speaking to you now, have been caught by it." He cut himself short and exclaimed angrily, "Good heavens! How long must we stand here? What a crush! This is becoming unbearable. Ah, Monsieur Marquand is signaling me. One moment, I beg of you. Above all, stay right where you are." Shouldering his way through, he carved a path into the crowd. Nicholas Dugrival watched him go, but, having lost sight of him, he stepped slightly to the side to avoid being jostled. A few minutes passed. The 6th race was beginning when Dugrival noticed his wife and nephew looking for him. He explained that Inspector Delangle was currently conferring with the police magistrate. "Do you still have the money?" his wife asked. "Of course," he replied. "I assure you, the inspector and I didn't let anyone get too close." He felt his jacket, stifled a sudden cry, thrust his hand deep into his pocket, and began to utter incoherent gasps, while Madame Dugrival stammered in terror. What? What is it? Stolen, he groaned. The wallet. 50 banknotes. It cannot be, she cried. It is impossible. But it is. The inspector, the rogue, it was him. She began to let out piercing shrieks. Stop thief. My husband has been robbed. 50,000 francs. We are ruined. Stop thief. They were immediately surrounded by police and led to station. Dugrival obeyed mechanically, utterly shell-shocked. His wife continued to scream, piling on explanations and heaping curses upon the man who had posed as an inspector. Look for him. Find him. A chestnut jacket. A pointed beard. Oh, the villain. He has ruined us. 50,000 francs. But, Dugrival, what are you doing? She rushed toward her husband. Too late. He had already pressed the muzzle of a revolver to his temple. A shot rang out. Dugrival fell. He was dead. The sensation caused by the newspapers regarding this affair is not yet forgotten. They seized the opportunity to once again accuse the police of incompetence and sluggishness. How could a pickpocket be allowed, in broad daylight and in so crowded a place, to play the part of police inspector and rob an honest man with such impunity? Nicholas Dugrival's widow fueled the frenzy with her lamentations and the interviews she granted. One reporter even managed to photograph her before her husband's body, at the very moment she stretched her hand over him, swearing to avenge the deceased. Beside her, an expression of hatred upon his face, stood the nephew, Gabriel. He, too, in low tones and with fierce resolve, vowed to hunt down and punish the murderer. Descriptions were published of the modest lodgings they occupied in Batignolles, and since both were now destitute, one of the sporting journals opened a subscription in their favor. As for the mysterious Delangle, he remained elusive. 2 suspects were arrested, only to be released immediately. Several leads were followed and then abandoned. Various names were whispered, until finally Arsène Lupin himself was accused. This prompted the celebrated burglar to send a famous telegram from New York 6 days after the incident. I protest with indignation against the slander invented by a corner police force. I send my condolences to the unfortunate victims. I am instructing my banker to hand them the sum of 50,000 francs. Lupin. And indeed, the very day after the telegram was published, a stranger rang Madame Dugrival's bell and handed her an envelope. It contained 50 banknotes of 1,000 francs each. This unexpected turn of events did nothing to calm the boiling passions. A new development only intensified the fervor. 2 days later, the residents of the building where Madame Dugrival and Gabriel lived were awakened at 4 a.m. by horrific screams. They rushed to the apartment. The concierge managed to open the door by the light of a candle lit by a neighbor. They found Gabriel lying in his room, bound hand and foot and gagged. In the adjoining room, Madame Dugrival was bleeding from a deep wound in her chest. She managed to whisper, "The money taken, all the notes." Then she lost consciousness. What had happened? Upon coming to his senses, Gabriel recounted, and Madame Dugrival later completed the story, that he had been awakened by the appearance of 2 men. One had bound him while the other applied the gag. In the darkness, he had been unable to see them, but he had heard the sound of the struggle his aunt had put up against the robbers. A terrifying struggle, Madame Dugrival declared, clearly familiar with the layout of the rooms, and guided by some devilish intuition, the bandits had headed straight for the small cabinet where she kept the money. Despite her resistance, despite her cries, they had seized the entire sum. As they fled, one of them, whom she had bitten on the hand, struck her with a knife, after which both escaped. "By what way?" they asked her. "Through my room's door, and then, I suppose, through the hallway." Impossible. The concierge would have seen them. For therein lay the entire mystery. How had the bandits entered the house, and how had they left it? No other passage existed. Could it have been one of the tenants? A meticulous investigation proved such a theory to be absurd. What then? Chief Inspector Ganimard, who was assigned to the case, remarked that he had never known another that left him so bewildered. It is always complicated when Lupin is involved, he said. And yet, this is not Lupin. No, there is something behind this, something ambiguous, something tainted. Besides, if Lupin did it, why would he take back the 50,000 francs he had just sent them? Another thorny question. What is the connection between the second robbery and the first one at the racecourse? It is all incomprehensible, and I have the impression, which rarely happens to me, that searching is useless. For my part, at least, I give up. But the examining magistrate was determined. Reporters joined their efforts with the judicial inquiry. A famous English detective crossed the channel. A wealthy American, obsessed with police chronicles, offered substantial reward to anyone providing the first clue capable of shedding light on the matter. Yet, 6 weeks later, they knew no more than before. The public came to share Ganimard's opinion, and the magistrate himself grew weary of wandering in shadows that time only served to thicken. Life continued in the widow Dugrival's apartment. Thanks to her nephew's care, she recovered fairly quickly. Each morning, Gabriel settled her in an armchair in the dining room by the window, attended to the housework, and then went out for provisions. He prepared the meals himself, refusing even the help offered by the concierge. Irritated by the incessant investigation and, above all, by the constant interviews, the aunt and nephew received no more visitors. Even the concierge, whose gossiping annoyed and exhausted Madame Dugrival, was no longer admitted. She took her revenge on Gabriel, accosting him every time he passed her lodge. "Be careful, Monsieur Gabriel. You are both being watched. People are lurking about. Why, only yesterday my husband caught some fellow peering up at your windows." "Nonsense," Gabriel replied. "It is just the police protecting us. All the better." But one day, toward 4 in the afternoon, a violent clash broke out at the end of the street between two vegetable hawkers. The concierge immediately left her lodge to listen to the insults being traded by the rivals. No sooner had she turned her back than a young man of medium height, dressed in a gray suit of impeccable cut, slipped into the house and hurried up the stairs. On the 3rd floor, he rang the bell. Hearing no answer, he rang a second time. The door opened after the 3rd ring. "Does Madame Dugrival live here?" he asked, removing his hat. "Madame Dugrival is still unwell and cannot receive anyone," replied Gabriel, standing in the hallway. "It is essential that I speak with her. I am her nephew. I could relay a message." "Very well," said the stranger. "Kindly tell Madame Dugrival that I have happened upon some valuable information regarding the robbery she suffered. I should like to inspect the apartment to personally verify a few details. I have considerable experience in such investigations, and my intervention may prove most useful to her." Gabriel studied him for a moment, then said, "In that case, I believe my aunt would agree. Pray, come in." Opening the door to the dining room, he stepped aside to let the stranger pass. But the moment the man crossed the threshold, Gabriel's hand flashed out. With a sudden, violent movement, he drove a dagger precisely into the stranger's right shoulder. A burst of laughter echoed in the room. "Got him!" cried Madame Dugrival, springing from the armchair where she had been sitting. "Bravo, Gabriel. I trust you haven't killed the bandit." "I think not, aunt. The blade is thin, and I held back the blow." The man staggered, reaching out his hands, turning as pale as death. "Dullard," the widow leered. "You're caught. At last. We've been waiting for you. Come on, you son of a dog. Go down. Don't like it, do you? There's no escape now. Down with you. First, one knee for the lady of the house. Now the other. How perfectly well-bred we are. And crack. Down we go completely. Jesus Maria. If only my poor Dugrival could see him now. And now, Gabriel, to work." She went into her bedroom and opened a mirrored wardrobe where several dresses hung. Pushing them aside, she revealed a second door at the back of the wardrobe, which led into a room located in the adjoining building. "Help me carry him, Gabriel. You'll take the very best care of him, won't you? His weight in gold. That is his price for now." One morning, the wounded man regained consciousness. Raising his eyelids, he looked around. He lay in a room far larger than the one where he had been struck. The chamber was shaded by thick curtains hanging at every window, and was almost devoid of furniture. There was, however, enough light for him to see young Gabriel Dugrival sitting on a chair beside him. "Ah, it's the boy," he whispered. "My congratulations, lad. Your dagger is as delicate as it is true." And he fell asleep again. On that day and those that followed, he woke several times, always finding the youth's pale face before him, those thin lips and black eyes that radiated cruelty. "You frightened me," he would sometimes whisper. "If you've sworn to kill me, don't be shy." But it's a strange thing. The thought of death always seemed the most amusing of all to me. Yet with you, my friend, the business takes on a truly sinister hue. Good night. I'd best go bye-bye. Following his aunt's instructions, Gabriel tended to him with the utmost care. The prisoner's fever had almost subsided. He began to take broth and milk. He was regaining his strength, and even started to joke. "When is the convalescent's first outing to be? Is the little carriage ready? At least show your teeth, you brute. You have the look of a miserable winner capable of any crime. At least a little smile for Papa." But one day, upon waking, he felt an unusual and unpleasant constriction. After some effort, he discovered that while he slept, his legs, torso, and arms had been bound to the iron frame of the cot with thin steel wire, which bent to his flesh at the slightest movement. "Ah!" he said this time to his guardian, "the high-stakes game begins. Time to bleed the chicken. Will you be the surgeon, Archangel Gabriel? In that case, my boy, you'd best give your little razor a good scrub. The service must be sterile, deuce take it." His speech was interrupted by the grating of a bolt. The opposite door swung open, and Madame Dugrival entered the room. She approached slowly, drew a revolver from her pocket, cocked it, and placed the weapon on the nightstand. "Bureau," the prisoner remarked. "One would think we were at the Ambiguous Theater. Act 4, the trial of the traitor. The execution carried out by a member of the fair sex, by the hands of Grace herself. When honor, Madame Dugrival, I only ask that you don't spoil my face. You are my only hope." "Silence, Lupin." "I know already? Confound it, you're not lacking in intuition." "Silence, Lupin." There was something so solemn in her voice that it made an impression on the prisoner. He fell silent. Lupin, for it was indeed he, watched his jailers intently. Madame Dugrival's bloated, crimson face contrasted sharply with her nephew's fine features. Yet both wore the same expression of implacable cruelty. The widow leaned over him and asked, "Are you ready to answer my questions?" "Why not?" "Then listen to me. I am all ears. How did you find out that Dugrival carried all his money in his pocket?" "From the chatter of the servants." "The little servant who worked for us?" "Yes." "And was it you who first stole Dugrival's watch to gain his confidence?" "Yes." She suppressed a violent gesture. "Fool! What a fool! You rob my husband, you drive him to suicide, and instead of clearing out, getting as far away as possible to hide, you continue to play at being Lupin in the very heart of Paris. Did you forget that I swore over the head of the deceased to find his murderer?" "That is what amuses me now," Lupin replied. "But tell me, what reason did you have to suspect me?" "Reason? Why, you gave yourself away." "I? Of course. Those 50,000 francs. As if that mattered. A mere gift." "Exactly. A gift you telegraphed from America, just to make everyone believe you were across the ocean on the day of the races. A gift. A clever ruse. The thought of the poor devil you killed gave you no peace. So you returned the money to the widow. Publicly, of course. Because you played a gallery, and a clown like you always needs a stir. It was all very grand. Except, my dear fellow, you shouldn't have returned the exact same banknotes that were stolen from Dugrival. Yes, you triple idiot, the very same ones, not a single digit different. We had the serial numbers recorded, Dugrival and I, and you were so foolish as to send me that very same packet. Do you see now what you've done?" Lupin burst into laughter. What a charming blunder! I am not the one to blame. My instructions were quite different. However, be that as it may, I have only myself to reproach. There, you've admitted it. You've signed your own theft, and your own death warrant as well. All that remained was to find you. Find you? No, much better than that. One does not look for Lupin. One makes Lupin appear. Oh! It was a thought worthy of a master. It came from my boy here, my nephew, who hates you as much as I do, if such a thing is possible, and who knows you inside out from all those books written about you. He knows your curiosity, your need for intrigue, your mania for poking around in the dark to unravel what others cannot. He knows that brand of mock kindness you possess, that ridiculous sensitivity that makes you weep crocodile tears over your own victims. He is the one who staged this whole comedy. He invented the incident with the 2 robbers, the second theft of the 50,000 francs. Ah, I swear to God, the knife wound I gave myself with my own hand didn't cause me a spark of pain. And I swear to you again, we spent many pleasant moments waiting for you, the boy and I, watching your accomplices prowling under our windows, scouting the terrain. You had returned 50,000 francs to the widow Dugrival. It was unthinkable that you would allow a poor widow to lose them again. You had to come out of vanity, out of hollow pride. And you came. The widow erupted into a piercing laugh. Well, how do we play you? The Lupin of all Lupins, the master of all masters, the unreachable and the invisible. Here he lies, lured into a snare by a woman and a boy, lying here in person, in our house, bound hand and foot, no more dangerous than a common lark. Look at him, look at him. Trembling with triumph, she began to pace the room like a wild animal that refuses to take its eyes off its prey. Never in his life had Lupin felt such a depth of hatred and savage fury in a human being. Enough talk, she said, composing herself. The widow returned to him and, in a completely different hollow voice, articulated sharply. During these past 12 days, Lupin, and thanks to the documents found in your pockets, I have put my time to good use. I know all your affairs, all your schemes, all your aliases, the entire organization of your gang, and every hideout you have in Paris and elsewhere. I even visited one of the most secret ones, the one where you hide your papers, your ledgers, and the detailed records of your financial operations. The result of these searches? Quite satisfactory. Here are 4 checks taken from your books, corresponding to accounts you opened in various banks under 4 different names. On each, I have written the sum of 10,000 francs. More would have been dangerous. And now sign. The devil, Lupin remarked mockingly. Why, this is simple blackmail, my most honest Madame Dugrival. Does it offend you? Naturally, it offends me. And do you admit that your opponent is worthy of you? The opponent has surpassed me in every way. So, this trap set for me was conceived not just by a widow thirsting for revenge, but also by a shrewd businesswoman seeking to increase her capital. Precisely. My congratulations. And perhaps Monsieur Dugrival himself? You've guessed it, Lupin. After all, what is the use in hiding it from you? It will ease my conscience. Yes, Lupin, Dugrival worked in the same industry as you. Oh, nothing grand. We are modest folk. A gold coin here or there, a wallet that Gabriel, trained by us, could lift at the races from the left or right. That is how we piece together our little fortune, bit by bit. That's better, said Lupin. Excellent. And if I tell you this, it is only so you understand perfectly that you are not dealing with a debutante, and that you have nothing to hope for. No help will come. This apartment is connected to my room. It has a secret exit that no one suspects. This was Dugrival's private quarters. Here he received his friends. Here he kept his tools of the trade, his makeup, and his disguises, his telephone. So, hope is futile. Your accomplices have given up searching in this direction. I have sent them on a false trail. You are lost. Do you at least begin to understand that? Yes. Then sign. And after that I shall be free? First, I get the money. And then, Then I swear by my soul, I swear by my eternal salvation, you shall be free. I don't quite believe you. Do you have a choice? That is true. Give it here. She freed Lupin's right hand and placed a pen in it, specifying, don't forget, each check is in a different name, and the handwriting changes every time. Do not fear, Lupin replied. He affixed his signature. Gabriel, said the widow, it is 10 o'clock. If I am not back by 12, it means this scoundrel has played one of his tricks on me. If so, blow his brains out. I'm leaving you the revolver your uncle used to kill himself. There are 5 bullets left out of 6. That is more than enough. And she departed, humming a tune. A long silence followed. Then Lupin whispered, I wouldn't give 2 sous for my own hide. He closed his eyes for a moment, then suddenly spoke to Gabriel. How much? As the youth remained silent, he raised his voice. I'm asking you, how much? Answer me, damn it. We're in the same trade. I steal, you steal, he steals. We were practically made to get along. Well, is it a deal? Shall we clear out together? I'm offering you a place in my gang, a magnificent position. What is your price? 10,000? 20? Name your figure. Don't be shy. The chest is overflowing with gold. A shudder of rage took hold of him at the sight of his guard's impassive expression. Ah, he won't even answer. What? Did you love that Dugrival so much? Listen, if you want to set me free, answer me. But Lupin fell silent. In the young man's eyes, he still read that same expression of cruelty he had seen before. Was there any hope of making him flinch? 1,000 devils, he hissed through gritted teeth. I won't die here like a dog. Oh, if only I could. Straining to burst his bonds, he made an effort that wrung a cry of agony from his lips. He fell back onto the cot, exhausted. Well, he uttered a minute later, the widow said it clearly. I am lost. Nothing to be done. Heaven receive your soul, Lupin. 15 minutes passed, then half an hour. Approaching Lupin, Gabriel saw that his eyes were closed and his breathing was as steady as a sleeper's. But Lupin spoke. Don't think I'm asleep, lad. One doesn't sleep at times like this. But one thinks about how it all came to this. One mustn't they? I'm also thinking about what's to follow. I have my own theory on that score. Whatever you may think of me, I am a believer in metempsychosis. The transmigration of souls. It would take too long to explain. You know what, my boy, shall we shake hands before we part? No? Then farewell, good luck, and a long life to you, Gabriel. He lowered his eyelids and said no more. He did not stir again until Madame Dugrival's return. The widow entered hurriedly, shortly before noon. She appeared extremely agitated. I have the money, she told her nephew. Clear out. I'll join you in the motor car waiting below. But I don't need you to finish this fellow off. I can manage alone. But if you want to see the rogue's face contort, give me the tool. Gabriel handed her the revolver, and the widow continued. Have you burned the papers? Yes. Good. He'll get what's coming to him now. And then we vanish. The shot might draw the neighbors. They should find both apartments empty. She approached the cot. Are you ready, Lupin? I am simply burning with impatience. No last request for me? None. Then, one word only. Speak. If I run into Dugrival in the next world, what shall I tell him from you? She shrugged and pressed a muzzle to his temple. Excellent, he said. And above all, do not tremble, dear lady. It will be painless for you, I assure you. On the count, shall we? 1, 2, 3. The widow pulled the trigger. A shot rang out. And is this death? Lupin remarked. Strange. I imagined it quite different from life. A second shot thundered. Gabriel snatched the weapon from her hand and examined it. Ah, he said, someone has removed the lead from the cartridges. Only the blanks remain. For a few moments, the nephew and aunt stood frozen in bewilderment. Is it possible? She muttered. Who could have done it? One of the inspectors? The magistrate? She paused and spoke hoarsely. Listen to noise. They strained to hear. The widow even went to the hallway, but she returned at once, infuriated by the failure and the lingering fright. No one. The neighbors must be out, so we still have time. Lupin, you were already laughing. Gabriel, give me the knife. It's in my room. Get it. Gabriel hurried away. The widow stamped her feet in a frenzy of rage. I have given an oath. You shall rot, you cursed villain. I swore to Dugrival, and every morning, every evening, I repeated that vow. I repeat it now, on my knees, yes, on my knees before the God who hears me. To avenge the dead is my right. So, Lupin, you are not laughing anymore. Powers of hell, you actually seem afraid. He is afraid. I can see it in his eyes. Gabriel, child, come here. Look into his eyes. He is trembling. Give me the knife. I shall plunge it into his heart before his shivering stops. Oh, you coward. Quick, quick, Gabriel, the knife. I cannot find it, the young man announced, running back in total bewilderment. It is not in my room. I cannot understand it. All the better, the widow shrieked as if possessed. All the better. I shall do it with my bare hands. She seized Lupin by the throat and began to strangle him convulsively, with all 10 fingers, with all her strength, choking the life out of him. Lupin gasped, a death rattle in his throat, and went limp. He was, in truth, finished. Suddenly, a crash erupted from the window. One of the panes shattered into 1,000 shards. What was that? The widow stammered, straightening up. Gabriel, even paler than usual, muttered, I don't know. Who could it be? The widow repeated. She dared not move, waiting for what might come next. What terrified her most was that on the floor around them, no projectile was visible, even though the glass had clearly shattered under the impact of a heavy, substantial object, undoubtedly a stone. A moment later, she began to search. Under the bed, under the chest of drawers. There is nothing, she said at last. Nothing, repeated her nephew, who had also been searching. Then, sinking into a chair, she continued, I am afraid my strength is gone. Finish him. I am afraid to. And yet, she murmured, it must be done. I gave my oath. With a final effort, she returned to Lupin and wrapped her gnarled fingers around his neck. But Lupin, staring into her ashen face, felt clearly that she no longer had the strength for murder. He was becoming sacred to her, untouchable. A mysterious force was shielding him from all assault, a force that had already saved him 3 times in inexplicable ways, and would surely find another means to keep him from death. She said softly to Lupin, How you must despise me. By God, no. In your place, I should have died of fright. Vermin, do you imagine help is coming? That your friends are near? It is impossible, you rogue. I know. It is not they who protect me. No one is protecting me. Then what is it? Then look at how you will. Something strange, fantastic, and miraculous has come into play. Something that scares you to the core, my good woman. Curse man, soon you will stop your grinning. I should be very much surprised if I did. Just you wait. She reflected for a moment and then asked her nephew, What would you advise? Bind his hand again and let us leave this place, he replied. Fatal words. They meant condemning Lupin to the most agonizing of deaths. Death by starvation. No, the widow answered. He might still find a straw to clutch at. I have something better. She picked up the telephone receiver. Having secured a connection, she requested, Number 822-48, please. And a few moments later, Hello, Cherit, is Chief Inspector Ganimard? Not for 20 minutes? What a pity. Regardless. We arrives. Give him this message from Madame Dugrival. Yes, Madame Nicholas Dugrival. Tell him to come to my home. He is to open the door of my mirrored wardrobe, and upon doing so, he will see that the wardrobe conceals an exit from my room into two others. In one of them lies a man securely bound. He is the thief, the murderer of Dugrival. You do not believe me? Inform Monsieur Ganimard. He will believe me. Oh! I nearly forgot the criminal's name. It is Arsène Lupin. Without another word, she hung up. The deed is done, Lupin. In truth, I like this revenge just as well. I shall have a hearty laugh following the debates of the Lupin trial. Are you coming, Gabriel? Yes, Aunt. Farewell, Lupin. It is unlikely we shall meet again, as we are going abroad. I promise to send you sweets at the penal colony. Chocolate, mother. Better make it chocolate. We shall eat it together. Farewell. Until we meet again. The widow and her nephew departed, leaving Lupin chained to his cot. He immediately moved his free hand, attempting to break loose, but he realized at once that he could neither snap nor untie the steel wires that bound him. Exhausted by high fever and harrowing ordeals, what could he possibly achieve in the 20 or 30 minutes that likely remained before Ganimard's arrival? He no longer counted on his friends. If he had escaped certain death thrice that day, it was clearly due to fortunate accidents rather than timely intervention. His men would not have settled for such improbable surprises. They would simply have set him free. No, all hope had to be abandoned. Ganimard was surely already on his way. Ganimard would find him here. It was inevitable, a fait accompli. The prospect of this meeting oppressed him beyond measure. He could already hear the taunts of his old acquaintance. He imagined the bursts of laughter that would greet this unbelievable news tomorrow. Had he been arrested in the heat of the action, on the field of battle, so to speak, by an imposing force of adversaries, well and good, but to be detained, snatched up, picked up, rather, under such circumstances was truly too ridiculous. Lupin, who had so often made others look foolish, understood perfectly how humiliating this conclusion to the Dugrival affair was. How absurd he would appear to the world after letting himself be caught in the widow's hellish trap, only to be served to the police like a dish of well-roasted and artfully seasoned game. Curse that widow, he growled. I'd have preferred she simply slit my throat. He listened. Footsteps echoed in the adjoining room. Ganimard? No. However much he hurried, the inspector could not yet be there. Ganimard would not act this way. He would not open the door with such caution as this unknown visitor. Lupin recalled the 3 miraculous interventions to which he owed his life. Could it be that someone truly existed who had protected him from the widow, someone who wished to help him once more? If so, who? Still unseen by Lupin, the stranger leaned behind the headboard of the cot. Lupin heard the clink of pliers removing the steel bonds. First his chest was freed, then his arms, and finally his legs. A voice said, "Get dressed." Utterly weak, he pulled himself up just as the stranger straightened. "Who are you?" he whispered. "Who are you?" A sense of infinite wonder overcame him. Beside him stood a woman in a black dress, her head covered by a lace that partially concealed her face. She was, as far as he could judge, young, elegant, and slender. "Who are you?" he repeated. "We must go," the woman said. "Time is short. If only I could." Lupin replied, after a desperate but futile attempt, "I haven't the strength to stand. Drink this." She poured some milk into a cup, and as she held out, the lace shifted, revealing her face. It is you," he murmured. "You are here? You were?" He stared in amazement at the woman whose features bore such a striking resemblance to Gabriel's, whose face, regular and delicate, was just as pale, and whose lips were set in the same hard, unpleasant expression. A sister could not have looked more like her brother. It was beyond doubt the same person. And without for a moment thinking that Gabriel might be hiding under women's clothes, Lupin was, on the contrary, struck by the conviction that he was looking at a woman, and that the youth who had pursued him with hatred and struck him with a dagger was, in reality, a woman. For the convenience of their trade, the Dugrivals had accustomed her to men's clothing. You? He stammered. Who would have thought? She emptied the contents of a small vial into the cup. "Drink this," she commanded. It is a stimulant for the heart. He hesitated, thinking of poison. It was I who saved you, she reminded him. True, true, he nodded. It was you who removed the bullets. Yes. And hid the knife? It is here in my pocket. And you broke the glass when your aunt was strangling me? I did. With the paperweight that was on the table. I threw it out into the street. But why? Why? Drink. You didn't want me to die? But then, why strike me at the beginning? Drink. He drained the cup in one gulp, not realizing where this sudden trust had come from. Get dressed and be quick about it, she ordered, moving toward the window. He obeyed, and she returned him as he sank, exhausted, into a chair. We must go, we must. Our time is nearly up. Gather your strength. She leaned down so he could lean on her shoulder and led him toward the stairs. Lupin walked and walked, as one walks in a dream, one of those strange visions where the most unimaginable things occur, but which promises a happy end to a long nightmare. A sudden thought struck him, and he smiled. Poor Ganimard. The man truly has no luck. I would honestly give a few sous to be a fly on the wall at my own arrest. Having descended the stairs thanks to his companion, who supported him with surprising energy, he found himself in the street before a motor car, into which she helped him. Drive, she told the chauffeur. Lupin, whose head was spinning from the fresh air and the rapid motion, had little sense of their route or the details of the journey. He came fully to his senses in one of the apartments he maintained, under the watch of one of his own men, to whom the young woman was just then giving instructions. Leave us, she finally said to the servant. As she turned to depart, Lupin caught her by the hem of her gown. No, no. First you must explain. Why did you save me? Did you return without your aunt's knowledge? Why did you do it out of pity? She remained silent, standing very straight, her head slightly tilted back. She maintained that enigmatic, hard expression, but for a fleeting second, it seemed to him that the line of her lips expressed less cruelty than bitterness. Her eyes, those magnificent black eyes, betrayed a deep sadness, and Lupin, though not yet fully understanding, realized through pure intuition what was happening within her. He seized her hand. She recoiled in a sudden flash of emotion, in which he felt hatred, almost loathing. Since he would not let go, she cried out, Leave me! Let me go! Do you not know that you are loathsome to me? They stare at one another. Lupin bewildered, she trembling and agitated. A sudden flush rose to her pale face. He murmured softly, If I were so loathsome to you, you should have let me die. It would have been so simple. Why did you not do it? Why? Why? How should I know? Her features contorted. She hurriedly buried her face in her hands, and he noticed 2 tears glistening as they slid between her fingers. Deeply moved, he felt an impulse to speak to her with tender words, as one would to a young girl in need of comfort, to offer kind counsel, to save her in her turn, and tear her away from the wretched life she led. But such words would have sounded absurd coming from his lips. He no longer knew what to say, now that he understood it all, now that he could picture this young woman at the bedside of the wounded man, tending to the very person she had stabbed, admiring his courage and his wit, growing attached to him, falling in love with him, and thrice, despite herself and in a series of instinctive impulses mixed with fits of resentment and rage, saving him from death. It was all so strange, so unexpected, and this revelation so unsettled Lupin that he made no further attempt to stop her when she moved toward the door, backing away without taking her eyes off him. She bowed her head, offered a faint smile, and vanished. Lupin rang the bell sharply. Follow that woman, he told the servant who appeared. Then he corrected himself. No, stay here. It is better so. For a long while, he remained lost in deep reflection. The image of the young woman haunted him. Then he retraced in his mind this entire curious, stirring, and tragic affair in which he had come so close to his end. Picking up a hand mirror from the table, he studied his reflection for a long time, with a certain indulgence, noting that his ordeal and illness had not left too deep a mark. That is, what it means, after all, he finally remarked to himself, to be a rather handsome fellow,